something occurred to me the other day, and that is, are we doing intimidation checks wrong? I don't mean totally wrong. I don't think that we have some vast misunderstanding in the community of what an intimidation check is or what it means. But I think sometimes the checks we make on that skill are a bit misplaced. Let me explain. There'll be a situation in the game. You might be familiar with something like this as a player, or you might have run into this as a GM. Let's say the party goes and they're a whirlwind of blades and they cut through an entire tribe of goat men. And so finally, after having decimated this village settlement of goat men, they burst into the tent of the goatman chief, who's been cowering behind some barrels. They yank him out by the hairs of his chinny chin chin. They dump him in the center of the camp, surrounded by the bodies of all the slain goat folk. And they demand the goatman tell them something. Tell them where this person is. Tell us, or we'll kill you like we have the rest. And the GM will turn to the party and say, "Give me an intimidation check." Party rolls a 3 and fails. And then the GM comes up with some haughty response from the goatmen. "Ha ha ha ha! You don't have it in you, you cowards, you finkety finks." Something like that. This is incredibly deflating as a player. I'm not sure how I would feel about it as the GM. I think if I've gone through and followed this process through at this point, I might just shrug my shoulders and say, oh, well, I guess the goatman is just as brave or foolhardy or whatever. But I think when we look deeper into it, something seems to be a little bit wrong. Intimidation, for me, represents this idea of threatening someone and trying to make that someone think that you're capable of doing whatever the threat is. You're threatening to cut off someone's finger.
Every minute you don't tell us why you're here, I cut off a finger.
Mine or yours?
Whoever you're intimidating then is trying to determine, are you really going to cut off their finger? Are you the type of creature that would do that? Are you capable of doing that? And then because that is the threat against which they're hoping to use to leverage to get information, it's important. And we want to add that little bit of randomness and potentially something about the player characters, whether they look or seem intimidating, look or seem like people who can do that sort of thing or not. We want to roll some dice and make that adjudication and then go from there, which I think makes complete sense. If someone just came in off the street and said, "Hey, I'm going to cut off your finger if you don't give me your wallet," I'm going to look them up and down and look at their tone of the voice, see if they're carrying a knife and say, "Do I think you're going to do that? Or do I think you're just some loon?" Right. So that makes sense. However, in the context of my example, which I think comes up fairly often, just in things I've seen on the net and things like that. So I can't really, as usual, I can't necessarily speak for the community at large, but I've seen this come up. Then the context isn't, is the party willing to do this? Because they'll be in situations where they've done it. You've slaughtered the Goatman village. If the Goatman's wondering whether you'll kill him or not, the party's killed their entire family. They've killed their grandparents, their cousins, their uncles. They've killed goat folk who are just going about their daily business in the streets of Goat Town. They've killed everyone. So is it intimidation anymore when the party says, well, if you don't tell us, we're going to kill you too? To me, this is just a statement of fact. They've shown it. Maybe we'd say, well, the context is a little bit different because the Goatman's a prisoner, and will they do that? At that point, I feel like you're just splitting hairs. I think the main point of, is the party willing to take the life of a goat person, look around the scene, they've slaughtered 99 goat people. This one being 100 isn't going to do anything terrible. They've already done the work. Yes, they're going to do it. So at that point, I wouldn't roll for intimidation checks. This is just fact. The party essentially at this point is just telling them truth. And truth shouldn't be an intimidation check. If anything, I would probably want to roll some kind of insight check for the party against the goatman. So if I do have the goatman try to be brave, put up a brave face and say, do your worst, how realistic does that seem? Does that seem that the goatman is actually willing to die instead of revealing this information? Or is he really just scared and is hoping that he can just put on a brave face? That to me is the check that I would lean into more, and not intimidation. Because when you force a check in these circumstances, and I've talked about this many a time, and I'll just say it one more time, when you force a roll of the dice in a situation like this that's fairly obvious, you will at some point get the result that you may not want as a GM, And as a party, you don't want. It's that, oh, now I've tripped on my face, or oh, now the goat man decides to be a hero. I mean, he was just cowering behind barrels before. They're slaughtering the whole village, but now that we drag him out, suddenly he's a hero. Either A, it doesn't make sense. B, can interrupt the flow of your story, your adventure, whatever's happening. Maybe the goat man's meant to give out some information, but now you've kind of put yourself in a little bit of a trap in which you wanted the party to intimidate them, but intimidate them and get that information, but now they flub the role and they don't think of a way to now extract the information. So what do? Adds unnecessary complication in a situation that's pretty cut and dried. If the party is merely speaking truth that is demonstrable to the person they're intimidating, it's probably not intimidation anymore. I would even say call it diplomacy. It's really just a statement of, okay, this for that. Now, it could be that this individual wants to take whatever consequence for what they want. That's fine. I'm not suggesting that every time the party does this, NPCs need to just roll over and give them what they want. But if it's a matter of, the mechanics of the situation come down to asking the question, do they think the party will do X unless they themselves do Y? And the party's already demonstrated in the context that they'll go to town doing X all day long, 7 days a week, twice on Sundays, in fact. Then don't have them roll for an intimidation check. Just let them run with it. Let them feel tough. And then it helps you avoid those situations where someone who is clearly a party member who has just done horrible things. They're 8 feet tall, 400 pounds of muscle. They're covered in the blood and ichor and internal organs of some person's whole family. And yet they go up to that person and failing the intimidation check, suddenly this little peasant is just rising up and bowing out at them. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. And you can avoid that just by maybe thinking a little bit, just taking a little bit of that context. Ask yourself, what is the party saying they're going to do? Have they demonstrated either currently or in the past that this individual would know about that they can do those things and will do those things? Then maybe at the end of that, you go, they've done it. It's fact. Run with the facts. Anyhow, that's all I've got. Game on. And I will talk to you later, everybody.